Before we dive into that, though, next week we will have Ian Everett, one of the Tomeworks editors, on. He will be talking about writing magical duels, writing fight scenes that include magic.
Oh, we just had that the other day with the duels, duals, duels. You really, they're related.
Yeah. Apologies, that was on my part. So if y'all heard extra stuff, I
No.
apologize.
Nope.
Okay. So we should also talk about who we are before we get started.
Right.
So people have an idea of what we do and why we actually have, room to talk about the subject. So
Okay. I'll go first. I'm Daphne Strassert. I'm an author and an editor. I focus on writing horror and romance, and I edit those same books. And my experience with conventions, I have been a moderator and panelist at Comic Palooza for a few years. I've been a moderator and panelist for Right Hive and WizCon and the DFW Con. I've led panels talking about intimacy in science fiction, how to kill your characters, and vampires, dead, undead, or overdone.
So you're killing them and you're bringing them back to life.
Of course.
Anna?
Oh, okay. Hi. I'm Anna Hawkins or AP Hawkins. I'm a science fiction and fantasy author, editor at Tomeworks. I also have been a panelist and moderator at Comic Palooza for the past few years. Also at Right Hive. Um, uh, Sean and I went to one convention at A&M a few years ago to do panels that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head. But yeah, I've uh, uh, paneled at and moderated panels about um, sci fantasy genre, how to build aliens as an author, lots of other lots of different topics. This year at Comic Palooza, I'm moderating two panels. One is going to be about cozy fiction, where we're going to be talking about the cozy fiction genre. And the other one is going to be about writing dialogue, so how you can improve your dialogue in your stories. So if you're in Houston and you're planning to go to Comic Palooza this year, it's coming up pretty soon, and there are going to be lots of good writing related panels. You should totally come check ours out for sure.
And for all the authors, for sure. Hi, I'm Sean Carroll. I'm my editor with Tomeworks. I'm my author of climate fiction and community organizer. This weekend, I'm putting together Houston Poetry and Arts Fest over at the Orange Show. Feel free to check it out, htxpaf.com. But that'll be around and that'll be super fun. And Tomeworks will be out there hanging out. If you want to ask us any questions in person, that's a good way to do it. I love to do things where it's like acknowledging that writing is a community. So, I whether it is book clubs, I write-ins, I bigger events, setting things together, pushing things, I to work together. It's all an ecosystem. I So I've written down some of the conventions I have paneled at: Write Fest, AggieCon, WizCon, Comic Palooza, HPAF, Houston Poetry and Arts Fest, and Dream Foundry. I'm going to say among others because I'm pretty sure there's more.
Oh, hello. I'm Shannon Winton. Like Sean, I've been doing stuff for a long time. I think the very first programming that I was on preceded any writing conventions that I went to, and it was essentially medical concepts in fiction. It was something that the Houston Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers group put together. I think it was like in 2011, might have been 2012. And essentially, I did a presentation on how to realistically engineer the apocalypse by teaching what the actual emergency services at the different government levels are, as specifically in Texas. But along with that, we also worked on violence in your writing. So we had a suckling pig that was like 75 pounds,
I was going to say
and we
that's where
strung it
that
up.
picture was
It was
from of you taking apart. Yeah.
Yeah, and so a lot of people don't realize, what it's like to actually try to inflict wounds on something, or to be violent in person. And so we had a bunch of impulse weapons that we set out for people to try to use, and then help discover what actually causes physical damage and that kind of thing. So it was a very weird introduction to being on programming, but it actually was also a great one because it helped me figure out what was important from the perspective of an audience. And then when I went as an actual baby writer to conventions and started, getting on panels, or sorry, being in the audience of panels and checking things out, I was like, okay, well, this wasn't really worth my time, or this was really worth my time. And I know these people know their stuff, and I have enough background to figure out which one is which and who I should follow around essentially this weekend to learn. And so we've all kind of been there, even if we haven't destroyed a pig. So if you are new to the act of going to conventions as a writer, this is going to be a good place to start. And then if you are, higher up in your process, if you're acting as a professional going to conventions, we can also talk a lot to that. Since then, I've done workshops for various conventions. I've done podcasting for a number of organizations. I've taught classes for the Florida Writers Association. I teach classes for the Editorial Freelancers Association. I've done Comic Palooza years and years and years, among others. So let's talk about why you should even go to begin with. What is the point of this for you? That is the first question. How is attending a convention online or in person worth my time, worth my while, worth my money? So, Sean, I'm going to bug you to answer this question first.
Because it was on the tip of my tongue. Is that why you knew that?
Because you're
Yes,
actually
Shannon,
setting up a convention.
I know you.
Vibrating with excitement.
Yeah. Shannon, I know you, really enjoy conventions more when the blood splatters on you. It really makes it feel visceral, and most people don't I get to be so visceral with conventions for sure. But let's take that to the metaphor, which is basically if you go to a convention and hope that you have concrete things that have happened when you leave, you will be sorely disappointed. First thing I would say for sure is it's a gut check. Are you and the things that you want to do, things that are popular, things that rhyme with what others are interested in, are doing? It's also a chance for you to reach out and kind of make friends. It can be in a parasocial way for sure, but either finding yourself at the same panels as other people's, or even just at lunch, or even in, like a sales room or whatever. If you're seeing the same people, a couple of times, you can get a card or just say hi or exchange, Instagrams or something like that. These might not pay off right away for sure, whatever. But it's growing that slowly, and connections you would not get in your typical day to day. Thirdly, it is to get to make yourself an impression on people who are, a couple of echelons above you. If so-and-so is the special guest at an online con and they are doing their keynote speech, great, awesome. If you go later and tag them with a photo on Instagram Live with maybe some notes that you made or something like that. What did I say Instagram Live for? Just Instagram, anywhere. And can tag them, you'll end up like, oh, that person knows who I am. If you're at an in-person convention and somebody's having a panel and they get to the end and they have questions, and you can raise your hand and state a good question that, one, you want the answer to, but two, is an interesting question for the producer, usually for the writer, then that's great. That might spark a conversation. It is so hard to raise your hand and be like, oh, I'm going to stand up in front of people. But that's part of this learning, growing process of dealing with larger and larger groups. Take your Xanax beforehand, have your paper bag nearby to chill out afterwards. But these kind of practice things are good. We all want to be an artist, an author, on tour, sitting in front of a group of people in a bookstore, reading part of our book and answering questions. This is the test. This is the little bit of, put yourself out there to the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I think uh Sean is right. I think that like, all of those are good points, but I'm specifically going to talk about like going to conventions to kind of learn what other people are doing. And if you go, with an open mind and you go to watch panels and, ask questions and things like that, you can kind of learn what authors who may be a little bit further along in their publishing journey are taught what they're talking about, what they're doing. Sometimes you can get good insight into like the publishing industry. You might find some talks about, craft that can help you improve. So there's a lot of like opportunities at conventions to learn from authors who might be like a little bit further along on their writing and publishing journey than you are. So yeah, I mean, and some panels, Shannon mentioned, learning what's a waste of your time and what's not, and like, some panels will feel like a waste of your time. I have gone to panels and I'm like, why am I here? But like, you'll find good ones too. And so it'll be kind of a lot of conventions are kind of a mixed bag between, panels um being really good and informative and panels that, are kind of useless. But yeah, that's just, that's part of the deal, and that's part of the fun of attending is like, oh, I found a really good panel and I didn't expect it to be good, but it really was, so yeah, that's part of it.
I feel
I
like
think
it
another
depends
thing.
on. Oh, go ahead, Shannon.
Okay. One of the things that I think is really valuable too, it depends on the convention you're going to, of course, because some things are very tailored to getting you in front of, agents and having you do your pitch, and some of them are more educational, and some of them are more like genre conventions or conventions that are for things that are just popular. So like Comic Palooza is clearly not just a writing convention. So depending on where you're going to have different opportunities. But I think some of the best things that you can do is learn, as Sean kind of said, what's going on in the industry, especially if you're like watching a panel of people who work with publishers or who are part of the publishing, the traditional publishing world, or you hear agents talk about what they're going through when they are looking for people or what they're looking for now. It gives you a better sense of what this looks like as an actual career, and what it looks like to actually bring your book to readership or to audiences, even if you're not planning to traditionally publish. It gives you a sense of what the industry looks like. And I've got some other things, but I want to give Daphne an opportunity to talk.
Yeah, I mean, like what you said, it really kind of depends on what kind of convention conference that you're going to. So if you're going to Comic Palooza, it's worth noting that the literary track is not what 98.9% of these people are here for. They're here for the fan stuff. And if your interests overlap like that, that's great because there's tons of bookish stuff in the artist alley and fan stuff going on that you can totally participate. But there's also these nice like writerly things that you can go and learn a bit about craft. But if you are wanting to like seriously learn, you have to look at like writing conventions. So a lot of those have moved online. So like WizCon, Write Hive are both great examples of ones that go online. Um, Women in Publishing is also has been doing a great conference last year and this year. Um, and so those are there. But if you are like if you're shelling out money, you want to make sure like look at the programming beforehand, make sure that there are things that you are going to want to do at these things. Um, I had a really great conference experience at a local DFW conference, and unfortunately, they have decided to stop doing it. And that's a shame because it was one of the best ones I ever went to. And I went and participated in a world building workshop that like really changed how I work with stuff. And so you're gonna find gems like that. Um, you can also like it's great to see what established authors are doing, but also remember that the people that are in those conference halls with you are your coworkers. These are people that could be friends, like critique partners, potentially, new business partners. So if you see someone at one of these conventions, they ask a question that's really good, go up and talk to them. afterwards. Within reason, please don't scare people, but yeah, put yourself out there, like Sean said. You gotta take your Xanax and go for it.
I love that
Uh,
though. Daphne, just to step in before anyone else. You took it a step further. And all of this, all the way down the line, it's all elephants the way down, whatever you want to say. But I said, if you ask a good question, awesome. You're saying if you see someone ask you a good question and you're like, hey, that's awesome. That's the next, step down. It can be love your outfit, whatever, like little things that along the way, this is sociability, this is being neurotypical, or at least pretending at it. And these things, I all add up for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, I
So
also want to point out just really quick, and I'm sure we'll get into this more later. Something what we've been talking about in response to this question is like attending conferences as a participant. But there are or yeah, as like you are there to watch the panels, you are participating in the conference. But aside from like actually being a panelist or a moderator, or even Sean put in there a volunteer. There's another way to attend conferences as a writer, which is as a vendor, where you're actually there to sell your books. And I'm sure we'll get into that more later, but like, I just wanted to point out that like, we're answering why should you even go to conventions as an author? Another reason why is you can go to sell your books as a vendor.
I have such a soapbox for doing that, so we can address that one later.
Yeah.
that's in our
But
questions. So
sorry, I had one more point before we move
huh?
on to the next question. Is that a lot of us have mentioned Right Hive as like a really good online conference for authors. And I want to recommend that again. Like, Right Hive is really great. I think most of us have been panelists or moderators at Right Hive before. And it's a really great online conference. They do it every year. It's coming up in June or July this year.
Mhm.
But definitely, check them out. Go to their website. Check out Right Hive if you're looking for a really good, like writing oriented conference to attend.
So the other thing, if you aren't an online kind of person, which I presume you are a little bit because you're here, but in-person conferences are a great way to hobnob um, with some intentionality. This is, a mid-level skill, but BarCon is, alive and well at a lot of established writing conventions. So
Hey, Shannon,
um,
explain what you mean by BarCon.
BarCon is like when you go hang out after programming is done and you end up hobnobbing with just random people. And if you're good at banter or you're interesting or you're a good listener, that's also a great way to make an impression. You should not do this if you feel super awkward all the time. If this is truly something that everybody is at a bar and you have a history of alcoholism, I would not suggest doing this. But just hanging out with a drink, whether it's alcoholic or not, chatting, you'll end up in conversations with people who are big in the industry and sometimes not realize it. But you'll also meet people who have, very similar interests in you that you can talk to and like start passing book stuff back and forth after the convention is over. If you sat and had a chat that included an agent, then it's another way for you to be like memorable, be like, oh hey, yeah, we talked over at I'm gonna for some reason pull something away from the past. We talked at Bennigan's, and we had that conversation about your cat, and you said some of my stuff over like that. That'll register a lot because they'll hopefully remember that, because they're like, when was the last time I was at Bennigan's? But like it allows you to have a social engagement with a lot of people who are either there as participants or as sellers, or as other people in the industry. So it's one of those things that I would suggest doing if you are comfortable doing that. Again, ArmadilloCon is coming up this summer. That's in Austin every year. That one is a really strong convention for science fiction and fantasy. Specifically, the programming is usually really stellar. They have New York agents and blah, 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 blah show up, and then people who are like, um, acquisitions editors. Usually there's somebody from the big five, if not more than one, who's there on the programming. And they have a whole lot of traditions that are like very silly in the evening, and they do games and stuff. So there's a lot of opportunity to like non-programming interact with one another. And so like it's not a bad idea to travel a little bit just to get an opportunity to like mingle and socialize if that's something that makes you not feel terribly uncomfortable.
Shannon with her dial-up AOL and going to Bennigan's, absolutely.
There you go. I am absolutely aging myself as an elder millennial. But no, like it can be fun. I mean, there's certainly different ways to socialize in online cons versus in-person cons. But all of these things are great reasons to do it, especially if, you know, your plan is to eventually, you know, put your stuff in front of people. This is a good way to meet others who can either help you directly or who may, you know, write similar things where you can be critique buddies. There's all sorts of people that you can meet that can benefit you or that you can benefit, and have like a nice symbiotic relationship, even if you're not quite friends at the end of it. So those I think are really important things to do. So moving into our next question, how do you know what's gonna kind of suck and what you should actually to attend if you are, you know, a writer who's looking to come as an audience member? What are some red flags that this may not be a good panel for you?
All right. So AWP, Association of Writers and Writing Professionals, is a huge literary one. It is mostly universities and poetry people, but there are definitely good amount of fiction writers, fiction publishers, and a bit of sci-fi and fantasy mixed in, just on the edges. But that's still interesting to me. I love going to that convention. Went to it in Baltimore this year. You have a huge list. They have so many panels. They have about 8 to 10 panels going on at the same time, each hour, hour and a half block, whatever, all day long for 3 days. It is massive. And so you start off with a list. You pick out the panels that you want. And I always pick out 2 or 3 in each time slot because I will go to the first one, usually the closest one. And if it's not getting me, I will leave. I will absolutely straight out, you know, pop out. Usually you pick up your phone. You pick up your phone, you look like you just had a call to take, and you grab your bag and you walk out kind of quickly. It looks like it's an emergency. The babysitter forgot the baby. And
That's so polite. I would just
Yes,
walk
thank
out.
you. Thank you for the social tip on how to make me feel less bad about just leaving.
Yeah,
That's so polite. I would just leave. I
the
wouldn't
more
even feel
hurried
bad.
you're looking at your phone intently, and the more hurried you get out of there, it looks more real. You know, like I don't know, the second anyway.
I appreciate you, Sean. I appreciate it.
So
If any
then
of y'all attend Comic Palooza, come find me after the convention hours, and I will tell you the most embarrassing experience I had being a panelist and having people walk out of my panel, and why,
No.
because it was not my fault, but it totally felt like my fault. Anyway, go on, Sean.
yeah, the second one and potentially the third one. And sometimes I'll go back. I'll be like, oh, this one wasn't as good as the first one. I'll go back and take my lumps, you know. But really, if you're in the situation and it's not to your liking, or it's not even, sometimes it's not what you thought it was going to be. One of the ones I went to was 4 professors for 20 minutes each reading their thesis. And it was like, this is not a panel. You guys are just regurgitating
ideal.
what you did 3 years ago, kind of thing. And that was terrible. But this is always meditative space. And this is where I take a little Buddhism into anything. If you are like, I am stuck in this situation, I'm in a huge row, I can't get out on either side, or there's nothing else to go to, you got a notebook, you got a pen. It doesn't have to be about what they are doing at all. Work on something else. It's a bit rude to pull out your phone and do stuff, but I tell you what, if you are writing on paper, it looks like you're paying attention.
Yeah. So I want to kind of piggyback again off Sean. So when I in my former career as a biologist, I attended conferences, biology conferences, and I It's the same, it's a similar kind of thing as AWP. These would be huge conferences, multiple panels going on in any given time slot. And so the strategy is kind of the same, but like for those, I think that's where I got used to just walking out. If if it wasn't what I wanted, because everyone does it. And so, you don't have to be embarrassed about walking out. If you really are worried about having to climb over people, which I don't like having to climb over people. That's like the one thing is like I don't need to, feel like I have an excuse to leave. But if I feel like if walking in, I feel like I might want to walk out at some point before it's over, I will sit on the end of a row. So I don't have to climb over anybody to get out. Maybe somewhere near the back. But no, yeah, it's especially if you're at one of these bigger conferences where there are multiple options, don't be afraid to walk out. One thing that I am always wary of is um a panel of like one person. Because every one of those that I have attended, which like that's different than like
A
at
workshop.
Comicpalooza,
A
at Comicpalooza
workshop.
we'll have authors who do like, AMAs. And so that's like the author and a moderator, and they're doing a question interview type of thing. But that's different. I'm talking about panels that are like a single person. And every one of those that I have attended has turned into, instead of like the topic that they said they were going to talk about, it's always turned into that person shilling something. Whether it's their book, their coaching, whatever, it always turns into someone shilling something. And like I've already spent, you know, $100 or more to be at this conference. I don't want to be shilled at while I'm there. So I am always wary of the panels that are just one person, because oftentimes that's what they turn into. So
Now I would like to say that is different from what if someone is running a workshop or like a
yeah.
specific like they are presenting a topic, right? And that is different from a single person panel. Um, so before you ever go to your conference, make sure that you look at the schedule and you've, like Sean said, pick out the panels that look interesting. Read the descriptions. If you were deciding between a couple of panels, look at who the panelists are. If you're going to be going to a panel that's giving writing advice, make sure that these are the kind of people that you want to get writing advice from. Like, what are their books? What is their expertise? What is their reason that they're on this panel? Um, and you might find that there are, if you go to like one panel and there's someone you really like, hey, go look at what their other panels might be, as a way to like see if they can give you more, you get more value from those.
That is a great point, Daphne, and I'm going to jump in before somebody else gets back at it. And if you find somebody that you love and you know you want to see them, follow them to the different panels for sure.
Yeah, I one of the things that I was going to say is essentially what Daphne said. Like, are these people that you want to take advice from? Especially if you are unfamiliar with them, and being unfamiliar with a presenter or panelist is not really that big a deal. There's so many mid-list authors, and even well-paid indie authors who aren't household names but are great presenters and a wealth of knowledge. So you just not recognizing them by name doesn't necessarily mean that they suck, but go research them. They have one book out and it has zero reviews. This person may not be the best to give you advice unless they have some sort of other role that they have that gives them some sort of validation or like that gives them authority. So you will see that sometimes in smaller conventions where somebody's like, oh, I want to do this, and they manage to get on a panel, but they really don't have the background. So that's kind of something to look into as well. Like, if you aren't sure which to attend, check essentially the references for the panelists, because that's a big deal. And this is something that I kind of wish I'd done back when I went to the Real convention, like Worldcon, like where they do the Hugos. They had that back in San Antonio in the teens. And I ended up going to a number of science fiction and fantasy panels that were they were all old crotchety conservative men who were very bad at the fact that women and minorities were around and that we were in the way of them on their scooters. And like there was like a bunch of stuff where I was like, oh, this will be really cool. And I would go and it's just like a pro-gun rally. And I was like, this was not what I wanted. I thought we were talking about advancements in tech and warfare for like our stories, not like how mad we are at not being able to buy bullets at Walmart anymore. So check people.
Has any
Look at
have any of y'all ever from the cheap seats challenged or hollered something at a panelist?
I've wanted
No,
to.
because that would put me in the floor.
Yeah, I've
100%.
definitely wanted to before.
Oh, I
but
definitely have. Yeah. But that takes the gumption for sure.
yeah. I've
Yeah.
wanted to. I've been in a situation where as the moderator I wanted to start a fight before, but I didn't because
Oh.
that wasn't my job.
Let me throw this out as well, since we're talking about the panels and also having full schedules, if you're not liking it, or if you're not liking any of them, whatever, don't push yourself that you need to acquire all of this knowledge. It's a day or it's 3 days or whatever, but you will get burned out.
Yes.
And so if you have that moment of either the last panel was great and I don't know what to watch right now, or this panel isn't quite doing it for me, check yourself internally. Am I hungry? Do I need to sit down? Do I want a coffee? And those interstitial moments can, one, go back to what we said before about meeting people, saying hi, whatever, but also two, can keep you going for the long haul to take regular breaks often.
Absolutely agree. Make sure that you are taking breaks. If there's nothing you're particularly interested in, you can go sit in a panel and just check out in the back and not really care. Or you can go get a coffee or food or go sit at a table. Those are all absolutely fine things to do.
Yeah. You can go walk around the vendor floor and just veg out for a little bit.
You can leave the convention,
Yeah, you can just completely
you
leave
can
the
get
building.
outside. If you're like, I'm spending 8 to 10 hours indoors, you can get outside, take a walk. I love this about AWP as well. They have a ton of offsites. And so it was a full day thing, but because I was going with people, I was going to Baltimore with people who were not going to the convention. I spent part of my day going to panels and then would go out to, lunch or dinner or, to a tourist attraction. And then I would catch some of these poetry readings at night, and it would be like, are we meeting in a queer bar for a burlesque drag poetry? Or are we meeting in a plant store for Nick Flynn, who's kind of a famous memoirist, to give a reading in a plant store? It was all these interesting places, and this goes to, what Shannon calls BarCon. I'm not going to call it that. Like there are just those interstitial spaces where that can be more important than the main event. And often that happens off-site for sure.
Mm-hmm.
One
Yeah,
of the other things too for online conventions, this kind of stuff still happens. It's just going to be on Discord, or it's going to be organizations or people who are being repped doing after parties, like online after parties. So especially if you're doing an online convention, make sure to check ahead of time in their Discord. Usually it's in the general chat if they don't have like an offsite events channel to see what other meetup kind of things are happening, because there are usually, especially with larger conventions, even the online ones, there's usually something that's happening, even if it's not directly being programmed or set up by that convention. A big author is going to be like, hey, I'm going to do an AMA for you guys. Come meet me at this Zoom. Or it'll be like, anybody who's writing science fiction with people who are missing a leg, chill out with me for an hour over here. And some of it will be really wacky like that, and some of it will be like very kind of normal, like anybody can come. So check those spaces to figure out what you should be doing after the convention programming is like kind of closed for the day.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, I think I cut you off.
Oh no, that's okay. I was just gonna say, like, as far as taking breaks, like one of my favorite things that I've ever done at a conference was at ecological conference, biology. It was in Florida and it was near the Everglades, and I had never been to the Everglades before. So like this conference was all week. So I flew in on Sunday. The conference was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then I was flying out Friday afternoon. But on Thursday, I was just so burnt out. I was like, I cannot attend another panel. I cannot do this one more day. So I took myself to the Everglades for the day. Because I was a poor, they had offsites, like, Sean was talking about AWP has offsites, and this conference had offsites, but you had to pay money for them to go. And I was a poor grad student. I couldn't afford one of the offsites. So, so yeah, I took myself and I went on a fan boat tour. I went to the Everglades National Park, and went on a hike. And yeah, I had a great day. And that was like, and it was really great because on Friday I had to present a poster of my research that I was doing. And so it was a great way to help me like reset after being so tired from attending, basically 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day. It was a great way to like reset myself and be ready for like my poster presentation on like that final day of the conference. So, yeah.
That's often I've heard of so many people going to cons and going balls to the walls for 3 days and
Mhm.
then cutting out,
Yeah.
not going to even the thing that they really wanted to
Mhm.
because they've been burned out by doing too much ahead of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I they did have one I at AWP this year that I did not go to. They were going to take a bus from the convention center and drive out to a park and go for a walk out into kind of the spring in Maryland. I and then do a reading in the
Mhm.
woods. And I was like,
Mhm.
that's adorable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I'm not waking up at 7 a.m. But 7 a.m. wise, routine, even if this is, just a 3 day con in your own town, especially if you're traveling though, having touch points
Mhm.
where at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, something like that, you have something that you're consistently going to do can help cut down that feeling of chaos because you're controlling a period of time.
Yeah.
To kind of go along with that, especially because most of us are introverts by nature. I'm like an unwilling introvert extrovert at this point in my life, but I did not start out that way. In conventions, finding a specific location, if you can, that is quiet, that is for you, or some of the places that you go to, they're beautiful. Like if you were in San Antonio and it's on the Riverwalk, like being like every day to recenter myself and get away from like the social noise. I'm going to go take a walk down the Riverwalk. That is so helpful. Even if it's not quite as routine as what Sean is saying, but like finding a place that you are not suffocated by people, that is visually stimulating in the right ways, is really helpful. So even if you have to leave the area to do that, I would suggest doing it. If you can find, just a beautiful like outside scene from a window, or if they have gardens, depending on where the convention is, I would do that. And if you are at a social convention that is online, find that space for yourself in real life, because you can get burned out socially from online intervention not intervention, online like engagement too. So if you have a park down the street where you can go feed peas to the ducks, like go do that. Or if you go to the gym to de-stress, go do that. These things are stressful. There's usually a lot more stimulation, even if it's great. It is overstimulating. So go you know, decompress from that, and recognize that like there's nothing wrong with needing to do that. Like you're not failing because you maybe want to go sit in a dark stairwell for a while, which is what I will do at Comic Palooza quite often. And don't feel bad telling people like, hey, I'm gonna cut out, I'm just gonna go over here for 5 minutes, I'll see you guys downstairs. That's totally reasonable.
I want to throw out a point about cons, and it relates to finding that space or finding routine as well, which is the food and drink. It's expensive as hell. It sucks. And usually there's huge lines.
Mhm.
So on your way there, you're bringing coffee or whatever drink is your choice. Some places you can't bring in, like the airport, whatever, like can't bring in drinks, but most places you can. As well as snacks, granola bars, fruit snacks, whatever. This will give you variety from the things that everybody else has. And this goes to the taking a break kind of thing. If you go for 2 hours and you look at that sandwich on the buffet line again and go, I had that yesterday, I don't want it again. Cool. Take yourself an hour and a half to go somewhere else. Houston is great for this, by the way. Phoenicia, big flaming advertisement for Phoenicia, please. Phoenicia, just a block
Comicpalooza.
away from George R. Brown Convention Center.
Mhm.
Very good food. Does have a bar. Does have ice cream. Has a cool place to sit down and hang out and be social. And also has lots of great candies and stuff like that that you can pack into your bag and go back to the convention with.
Yeah.
At a
Now,
reasonable
even-
price.
So even events that say, no outside food and drink and they do bag checks beforehand, I have never had someone who did a bag check tell me I could not bring a water bottle with me. Okay?
Yeah.
Bring a water bottle with you. Like for real. Like at least. And like last year, we even brought like sandwiches that we made at home to Comicpalooza. And even though they checked our bags and it says no outside food or drink, they didn't stop us from bringing that in with us. So like, yeah, you can
Yeah,
eat
you're
food.
really putting that out on the internet? Oh no.
Yes,
Remember
I
this.
am. I am
All right,
because
okay, we're going a little bit past time because we've only
I know
been
we're-
talking about like this
Sorry.
goes for everybody. If you go to cons and you go to the artist or writer alley, should you buy swag? Should you feel compelled to buy swag? And I'm glad this was on here because the very first convention that I went to, I ended up buying a bunch of books because I was pressured and they all sucked.
I understand the desire, not necessarily the desire to buy it, but like the social pressure of please buy my book. Um, you do not have to buy a single thing. You're already paying to be there. If you want to either remember it for later or disingenuously, if you don't like it and you don't really want to buy it, take their business card with the vague promise of I'll look into it later, right? If you're trying to like gracefully get yourself out of a situation without actually spending any money.
yeah,
No, you should never have to buy something out of guilt.
right.
I'm going to throw this
100%
out there
agree.
from the vendor side. Not that I've done it at a huge con or something like that, but I am definitely a seller of things and have been in situations like this. Somebody says, "Oh, I'll be back." They will never be back. But you know that, they know that, and you say, "Thanks." You just perfectly fine. It just there's no obligation, but it is a dopamine hit to buy something. So if you're feeling a little down and you can get yourself a couple cute stickers or something like that, it can bring your spirits up.
Yeah. Usually what I do if I'm feeling kind of guilty because I don't really want to buy the book, I do what Daphne says. I take a business card or like sometimes they'll have free bookmarks that have like their website and their name on it. I'll take the free thing from their table. But or I just like don't stop. You can't feel guilted if you don't make eye contact. So
That's
you
the
just
other
walk
part.
through and just
I hate I'm so glad this question was there because I hate alleys with a passion. Please do not try to sell me things. It ramps my anxiety, but I may be alone in this. But there are times
Oh.
where like we'll all be there and be like, "Whoa, Telworks is all together," and I'll be like, "Y'all can go inside of the alleys, and I'll see y'all when you get out."
I like walking through the artist alley or the
Yeah.
merch alley. I like doing it. I don't want them to try and like engage me if I haven't walked up to their booth specifically.
Yeah.
And I know it's a
But
great
if
selling
you're
strategy.
there and somebody is trying to like be pushy, that's just bad salesmanship. This is not on you.
That's a thing as well. And this is from the vendor side, which I hope alleviates some pressure for y'all and the audience, yada yada. The more experienced you are with it, you know that the product sells itself, and you know that a sale that gets you one start on the internet is worth less than not making a sale. So, if you're able to chill back, take in questions, oh yeah, absolutely. The more someone is engaged, the more you're going to engage with them. But play it cool, be the Fonzie. Like, It is absolutely a much better idea. And so if you're coming across vendors and they're like, hey, let me tell you about this, that immediately is you have not done this that often, and or you're in a bad situation. If someone is cool about their stuff, you can absolutely walk up, look at it, never crack the spine all the way, only 90-degree angle to look at someone's book if you want to check out the pros, so then it's still sellable. If you pop that sucker all the way open, they are cringing right behind you, just so you know. But that should be, you walk up, you do things. If you don't say anything or you say thank you so much and walk away, any good vendor who's been there for a lot knows, like, this is the deal. We're going to get bites on the line, but that does not translate into a fish on the hook.
So let's move over to like you're going to be part of the programming. How do you prepare for a panel?
See if you're a moderator, give your people a list of questions. If you're a panelist and your moderator has not given you a list of questions, ask them for a list of questions. These things take thought.
Or suggest some.
And yeah, these things take thought and they take time. And if you want to have a good panel, you need everyone to have put thought and time into it beforehand. And so if your moderator is good, they won't make you ask for it. But if your moderator is not on top of it, make sure that you ask for it or nudge them
What
or come up with some of your own.
what if you are not 100% sure you are the best person to be on this panel, but you still want to do a good job? Like maybe you don't know some of the questions the moderator has sent out to you. What should you do then?
You should do some research.
If you're still
If you
not
have
confident,
a list of the questions beforehand and you see a lot of things that you're not familiar with, you can learn, you can take the time between when you receive the questions and when you have the panel to do some learning. And then you can always say in the panel, I'm not really an expert on this subject, but here's what I've learned about it. And so
yeah.
you always want to have something to say for every question.
If you're not confident, even after you've done some research on it, let the moderator know ahead of time as well. Like if there's someone better suited for this, ask them, not me.
I will first answer Susan's question. Do you get together before a con to practice? No, but you do have that 10 to 15 minutes of arriving and kind of milling before it starts to get a pulse check on other people's emotionality. And I, Machiavellian wise, whatever, I would say, one, as a moderator or a panelist, keep your answers short and sweet. People can always ask you again, will you elaborate on that? But keep it short and sweet so that you're not taking up more space than the others. And if you notice that someone is getting slighted or maybe not speaking up enough for themselves, but you want this to be more, you can say, Anna, what do you think?
Pass it to someone else. Yeah.
It's one of the things that as a moderator, I do notice that people who are new to this process tend to ramble, as Sean is kind of talking about. And even, I mean, I ramble all the time and I've done this forever. But it's also very easy to underestimate how long you've been talking because once you've started going, you have so much to say and it feels like you're not being allowed. So it's not a bad idea to wear an old-fashioned watch, especially if you have a history of doing this or, dominating, or yeah, just look in the eyes of the audience to see if your answer has gone on for longer than seems acceptable. If you've been answering a question for 5 minutes, that is a problem. Your moderator should probably have curbed that. But if you find yourself wanting to ramble, a very good way to stop yourself is like, I've got 1 minute from when this starts, and
But yeah, glancing
close it
around,
up once
really,
you hit
glancing around the room is a really good way to be like, oh, I am wrapping this up right now.
it. But no, Susan, we don't usually get together. One of the things that most conventions do is they have the moderator contact you ahead of time. So even though the schedule and the programming isn't available to the public, we're aware of the stuff that we're on, generally speaking, at least a few months out. Now, there are a number of conventions where you get told like, "Thanks for offering to be here," and it's like 3 days, and you're like, "What?" Like, I just thought you guys weren't going to contact me. But most of the time, you at least have a few months. Your moderator is supposed to be communicating with the panelists, and so they will send out, the questions, and then the panelists are like, "Hey, I would really like to talk about this thing that is absolutely relevant to the topic, but also relevant to the book that's coming out. Can we swing this in?" So there are ways that you can communicate with each other and also form a rapport because you should be replying all. And you get to know people and what like their kind of voice sounds like if they're responsive. There are times where I moderate where like somebody just does not respond at all because they're too busy. That's fine. And then there's sometimes where people are like, can we talk about this too? I love this topic, even if it has like, you know, tangential bearing. And I'll be like, I can see if I can find a way to add 5 minutes somewhere, or we can talk less about this and talk more about that. So,
I've also had when I was a moderator, one of the things I would ask my panelists is, are there any things you explicitly want to avoid? And so we were talking about queerness in fantasy at one point, and I had someone reply, this is obviously before the panel even happened, saying, "Hey, I'd really like to leave Harry Potter out of this." And I was like, "Okay, great. We won't talk about that then. That could be a whole discussion on its own. So we're just going to focus on other things." Um, so if you have things like that as well, let your moderator know.
so
Throw this out
really
as
just kind of make
well. Okay.
go for it, John.
Throw this out as well. When other people are talking, you are not picking up your phone. You're not. You're paying attention to them. You're nodding along or disagreeing, making hand gestures. You're a mime, essentially, but you're backing up the other people you're with and responding to it. Because when you have an audience of people, yes, 90% are going to be looking at that person. Somebody's looking at you. Don't look like, like
Someone's
because
taking a
people will
picture for the media, social media. You do not want
taking
to be that person
a
on social
big bite
media.
of a sandwich, yeah.
Yeah, that is very embarrassing when you're obviously not there to engage. What about when somebody kind of goes off the rails on the panel, whether you're a moderator or you're just another panelist. If somebody starts kind of bloviating about a topic that they shouldn't be, or they're taking a really long time, is there anything that you can do in the moment to try to get this back towards a place where the audience can enjoy it?
I mean, if you're the moderator, that is your job and your role. And you very much, if you've ever worked in a corporate office, you need to like reach deep down in your soul and grab the jargon and say, "Hey, that's a great topic. Let's talk about it on the Discord later. Let's circle back to this, right?" You bring in all of the all like let's put a pin in that and we'll get to it if we have time in the Q&A, right? So that as a moderator, you're pulling all those stops in. Table it. Thank you, Susan.
Yeah, it can be hard if you're a panelist to do that. One of the things that I find to be um, really problematic is, people who are dominating the conversation and then interrupt others. So if I'm a panelist and I notice somebody doing that, I'll be like, hey, 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 I wanted to hear what she had to say. Hey, Sean, I'm not saying you do this, but Sean, can you hold on a second? I really want to know what Anna was going to get at. And so even if I'm not the moderator, I can kind of shut that down a little bit. I can help some. So I would suggest keeping that option in your back pocket. And that way it also lets the person know, like, oops, you've made a faux pas. So if they're doing things because they're nervous and don't actualize like what they're doing, or not actually, they don't recognize what they're doing, it's a useful way to gently say, like, oh, you're great, but I really want to, I want to hear. Give this person the space. So there are gentle ways of doing it. We could actually do a moderation panel, but I don't know that we really want to. But in general, is there any other advice you have for people if they are going to do panels before we move on? Because we have like 3 minutes left and we have like 4 questions, I think. All right, let's move on. How do you prepare for a public reading?
Please have read your stuff before.
Yeah,
Read it,
practice.
time it, do it in front of a loved one who can tell you, "Wow, you're speaking way too fast."
T,
Yeah.
take care of your voice. Don't talk a lot for hours beforehand.
Yeah, I think just practicing is the most important thing. Because you don't want to be stumbling over your words. And even if it's like something you wrote, you still need to practice reading it out loud, which like honestly, you should do that before it's published while you're editing, but that's a whole different topic. Uh, but like, yeah, you should read it to yourself beforehand multiple times.
I want to point out a comment we have from the previous conversation. Mary said she wrote to a con about a panelist who was always around, hadn't published in decades, and never had anything useful to say. That's true. As an audience, if you see somebody doing something egregious, please go to the convention runners know, because they do respond to that. That's a great point. Thank you,
It's
Mary.
possible that they knew the coordinators, and because they've been here before, they're just someone easy we can put on.
Yeah, that happens. For reading, pick at least a few pieces and see how easy it is to read them. See if what you really want to talk about is going to end up running too long. And if you're going to be like trying to speed read through it, it's even if it's a really poignant piece, it may not be a realistic one. And it's better to do a shorter, slightly less poignant piece that you can actually get through in your time slot, rather than like flub your really important prose because you're trying to like talk at double speed to get through it. So I think it's really important to select an easy to read section, even if it's not your favorite. And think about the story inside of the story, right? Like you want a section that is going to be interesting and evocative and gripping. And sometimes you can't really do that with your best parts because they require so much foreknowledge that you can't just give a summary of what's happening. Or because like the important build-up pieces are spread too far out through a scene and it's just going to be too much content. So be realistic about what will get the most interest, and what you can actually perform.
Leave room for those dramatic pauses.
Fantastic. Any other advice for doing reads?
Love that
Cool
about timing it.
beans.
Love that about doing it in front of an audience of one.
So I have another question. Basically, if you are going to be doing signings or you're going to do audience engagement outside of like the programming specifically, is there anything that you should be doing, to prepare yourself for that?
Have lots of pens specifically for signings. Hopefully you're not alone in doing your signings. The other advice I've heard from people is as much as you want to sit and engage with every fan, you might have to move things along.
Yeah.
I'll make a point about the reverse as well. If nobody comes or if very few people come, be grateful. Take the pictures and just let it slide, move on to the next event. Could have been that it was raining. Could have been that, I don't know, George R.R. Martin was in the next aisle over. It doesn't matter. None of this in terms of press. Marketing is literally like an imaginary world. You do the best you can and you move on from that. You can't get your feelings hurt.
I mean, Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman had an empty signing, which is insane because I would have given anything to have seen that.
Yeah.
And then you would have had
Um,
like 45 minutes to sit there and talk to them.
Ah, we all missed out.
Another thing you can do to like prepare yourself, it's gonna be, I think the ones at Comic Palooza are like an hour time slot. So it's gonna be an hour. And if it's busy, it's gonna be an hour of back to back to back to back to back people. So make sure that you have taken care of yourself beforehand and you're not burnt out already going into it. Take care of your mental state before you start this signing so that when you get there, you are in like the headspace to actually like engage with fans in an appropriate way. Because you can really easily come off as being rude. If you're just even if you're just not in the right headspace, and you're just really short with everybody. Um, so yeah, take care of yourself beforehand. Make sure you're kind of like ready and focused when you go into it.
There's some logistic stuff you should be doing ahead of time. Now, if you are working with an agency, this is not something you're going to have to do. If you're an independent author, you're going to need to find out, and the con should tell you, but sometimes they don't. You need to find out if you are able to vend your own books for the signings, or if you have to use a chosen vendor to bring them in. Comicpalooza is one where you have to use their vendor, which I believe is Murder by the Book, but sometimes it changes. So you have to engage with that company to make sure they bring your books, because you're not the one that's actually selling the book if the person is coming in with them. You also want to find out, so you can tell people in on your newsletter or your news list, in your email list, if they are allowed to bring their book, or if they are required to buy the book there. Sometimes you make that decision, sometimes the convention makes that decision. So if you are new to this, those are things that are really important for your bottom line, because a sale on a book brings in a whole different amount of money than your pre-agreed upon, like per autograph amount, if there even is one. Because smaller conventions, it's just like, hey, here's some space and we'll tell people, but there's not like, there's not money flowing from one hand to another at all. So understanding the logistics and the cost of things. Another thing that would be good to do is figure out approximately how much you think you're going to sell. And that is a whole other beast, but trying to make sure you have enough books on hand if you're the one that's providing them without going overboard. So generally speaking, if you already have them, it doesn't hurt to carry them with you. If you don't already have them, it's probably better to be a little bit conservative, so that you're not producing books that you can't sell. So those are definitely things that I would look at, and that's pre-work that might be months out.
If you're being like conservative about estimating the number of books you need, and then you do end up running out, it might be a good idea to have like those like book plate stickers that you can sign instead. So like if you do run out of books and you still have people who want your signature, you can sign the book plate for them, and then when they get home, they either have a copy of your book at home or they can order one themselves and then put your signed sticker in the book. Yeah. So that,
Yeah.
they don't have to walk away with nothing. They can still walk away with your signature, you know.
That's a
I'll,
really great idea.
I'll throw this out as well, which is the David Sedaris method of doing it. David Sedaris, obviously very important, very much engaged with his fans, comes to these events, and I've been to a few of them where he asks a couple of questions of the person who's in front of them. And then as he's signing it, he either has a silly little drawing or a little saying that relates to the two sentences that were just said to him. You know, Lexington is beautiful. I don't know. Keep on writing, whatever. And that's great as far as if you're signing things for people.
I've got one last question. And this kind of harkens back to that Terry Pratchett book reading where there's nobody there. Because honestly, everybody has at least one that there's nobody around and it sucks. Or you're at a panel and there's an audience of one. What do you do? What do you do when there's no audience, or when the audience is like this one guy?
Have
They
any of y'all experienced this?
Yes, I have. And the answer is they wanted to see you talk or your panel or whatever, and you said that you were going to do it. So we're going to do it, and we're going to give it the best show we can, and we're going to let that person ask as many questions as they want, or I'm going to spend as long talking to this person as they want me to. You wanted to engage with me, so I'm going to do my best.
Yeah, Sean and I did a panel at AggieCon a few years ago. We had like what was it? It was like three people in the audience. We did it anyway. We had a great discussion. The audience got involved because there were so few of them. They felt like they could really connect with us. And so we just had a great discussion and we got them in on it too. And it ended up being a really great panel, even though there were only like three people there.
There were
So
more panelists. There were more panelists than
yeah,
audience members.
yeah, there because I think there were like four of us. Yeah, but it did it and like I still remember that because that was like several years ago. I still remember that, and it was like a really good experience as a panelist. Even though there were so few people, make the most of it, you
And they were
know.
all in costumes, they were all in
Yeah,
cosplay. And so you're having a discussion and it's with, like a flying moth, and then the lizard next to them says something, and then the fairy elf on the end has a rebuttal. It was very funny.
yeah,
But yeah, my thought
I
is, the one audience member, you get down. You get down to them. You're
yeah.
speaking to them. Let's have a discussion.
Hmm.
But this goes to, like sometimes things don't work out and it's not really your fault. One time back in the day, I was so, let's say, disconnected from pop culture that I set up a music and art show and then nobody was showing up. And then somebody mentioned why they weren't coming and they said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to the Super Bowl party." I had scheduled it on Super Bowl Sunday and had
Oh,
no
whoops.
idea.
That's
So
rough, buddy.
you angle the photos, you take the pictures, you move on to the next one.
Yeah, if you are the programming, if it's just you, so I have a lovely story from last year at Comicpalooza. I was interviewing an author and there were two people in the audience. And I asked her, I was like, hey, is this, what to keep doing? She's like, yeah, this happens a lot. It's no big deal. So we did the entire interview. And the two people in the audience, one of them was Paul Tremblay, the guy that wrote The Cabin at the End of the World.
Holy cow.
Wow.
I didn't know. I mean, like, I did not know him by face, and I mean, I realized that I had actually sat and had a conversation with them the like night before without realizing it because that shit happens. But like for her, like the dude that's the actual headliner showed up, and he was the only one, and the only person who walked in after him was like a dude that was just following Paul Tremblay, but now knows about this, about this writer.
What
So
an odd
do
thing
it.
to
You
do.
really don't know who these people are. You don't know if they will be your next super fan and your biggest cheerleader. And having that like very personal experience with a person tends to, I hate to use the word convert because it sounds culty, convert somebody into liking you a whole lot more because they
Mhm.
have this once in a lifetime opportunity and it was with you. So don't,
Yeah.
don't go too deep into your feels if people don't show up because that one person may tell 70 other people this story about how they got to hang out with you and talk about corn chips or something
Yeah.
when there was nobody else around.
Yeah. Yeah. And, if, and like, we've been talking about this in the context of like panels, but like if you're at a signing, and you're the only one, whether it's at a convention or like at a bookstore, um, make friends with the people at the bookstore or like the vendor that you're set up to do the signing with. Like, chat with them, talk to them. Especially like if you're at a bookstore doing a signing, these the people who work there, they sell books for a living. So like, they love books and they'll probably be more than happy to talk to you about, their favorite books or, whatever. So like, make the most of the situation that you're in. And yeah, even if you're alone, even if you're not on a panel, you can still, strike up a conversation and a friendship with the the bookstore, the people working at the bookstore, or the people working at the vendor booth that you're signing at.
As a vendor, one thing to consider is to keep yourself busy. So if there's no one actively talking to you or in your booth, have a craft, something you're doing so that you are not just staring out at this giant sea of people looking helplessly at them, hoping they come to talk to you.
Yeah.
It is a lot less intimidating to approach a vendor if they are doodling or doing crochet or something that
Yeah.
they aren't staring into your soul, hoping you come talk to them.
Yeah. And it might make people more willing to come up and talk to you because, if someone's passing by your booth, and you're like crocheting and they're a crocheter, they might want to ask what you're making. So like, that might like give them a reason to want to come talk to you when they might not have had one to begin with.
All right, we are way over time.
Yeah, I was gonna say we should wrap this up because we have gone over. But why don't we talk about what we're doing next week, and let all these people
Sorry,
go on with their day.
Shannon, someone else needs the room. So
Next week, Ian Everett will be with us and he'll be talking about magical fights, magical duels. So if you want to deal with spells and halberds and magical swords, come hear him talk.
thank you so
All right,
much,
thank you.
y'all.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you so much. If you're not following us already, we do want to go ahead and remind you we will be leaving Meetup within the next month. So find us on our Substack at Tomeworks Forge, or go follow us at our events page on Eventbrite if you found us there. Make sure that you go back and follow. That way you'll get notifications for all of our events. And once I, clean this up, the recording up a little bit, I will send it out. It usually takes me a week or two. So if you're like, hey, I really wanted to take notes and didn't realize it, you'll have an opportunity to get it back. Everybody, we hope you have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.